What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to talk about a scenario for Bitcoin that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about out there. And the question is, what would happen if Bitcoin set new lows? What if it took out that low from back there in June? How deep would the Bitcoin price go? Would that be the end of the bear market? Is it a buy the dip situation? Well, like with all TA, it's speculation, but I'll be more than happy to speculate here on my channel like I always do. I presented the cases on why the current price level that we're at for Bitcoin is so important when it comes to any chances of there even being a new bull run. My current thoughts are that the June low has to hold. Several weeks ago, I was on the BitBoy YouTube channel, and they asked me, when do I think we're going to see a new all-time high for Bitcoin? And I responded, I think there's a chance that we won't ever see anyone, at least not in the next 4-year cycle. Their jaws pretty much dropped. They laughed at that idea. And I'm certain there were plenty of thumbs down that were just added to this video merely for stating that. But I'll show you guys the reason why. Of course, I'm not just going to sit here and be some type of FUD starter. I'll show you the charts and why my thought process goes down that road. But for any chance of there being a new all-time high in the next 4-year cycle, my thoughts are that the current level has to hold. Not a dip down to 14,000, not a dip down to 12, not to 16, but the current low in June has to hold. Otherwise, Bitcoin is making a very similar structure to what a collapsing asset looks like. One that eventually comes down here to below $3,000. First of all, before I add a whole new set of thumbs downs to my videos, I did anticipate that the top of Bitcoin was coming in here. It's now been about a year. I can't believe it's been a year since that time frame of really screaming, hey, this is the end for Bitcoin, this is the end for Bitcoin, and pointing down to lower prices, to which people argued it would be impossible for the price to dip back below the all-time high because it's never happened before. But I argued that yes, we absolutely have, and that this has been one major super cycle, and that we were coming up on the end of this super cycle. And this time period, we did actually come back down below the all-time high. And that we're in a major super cycle, and that we've made pretty equivalent moves over here to what happens during these super cycles during these time periods, and that this was kind of the ending. Here we go, we've now gone on to this long bear. But the argument was that we could not go below the all-time high because it's never happened before in Bitcoin's history. And yes, it absolutely has before. It sticks true with the model of supercycle theory that it would go below the all-time high. Hey, what do you know? We have gone below the all-time high. I was arguing all of this, all of 2021, and especially back in here in September, October, November, December. And I had completed my exit plan for Bitcoin by selling 65% of it on February 21st, 2021. Which was right there on the day of this top. So one of the first ones to kind of get out in here, right in the middle of all the Wall Street bet stuff, all the laser eyes, diamond hands, all the crazy stuff happening in there. It's hard to believe that's over a year and a half ago, coming up on 2 years now. So pretty crazy for me to be saying, hey, I'm starting to accumulate Bitcoin again, right? But I've been using this theory for a long time. So when I start talking about stuff saying, hey, if we break into new lows, it opens up the chance for us to be going down to like $3,000. It's not me being a fudster. I was perceived as a fudster back in here when selling my Bitcoin. You go read the comments of that tweet back there on February 21st. Yeah, you got all the stuff. Thanks for selling me your Bitcoin, dummy. And perceived as a fudster there. And I'm sure it'd be perceived as a fudster on this, but that's not my point. I just know that a lot of people want the price to dip down a little bit lower. And so I'm going to talk about my working theory on what would happen if that did occur, if this isn't actually the bottom for Bitcoin right here. We'll go back and we'll say, why was the top of Bitcoin, obvious there, outside of just like picking a fractal and saying the fractal said that that was the top of Bitcoin back in there. The thing was that Bitcoin's market cap had reached out to a 4.236 extension. So my working theory, even in the depths of C19. Back here, I was making YouTube videos, price of Bitcoin's $4,000, $5,000. I'm like, hey, we're going to 70K. No, you're irresponsible. It's never going to happen. Apply that same methodology to Ethereum that, hey, same thing, looking for the same thing for Ethereum, get up to that 4.236 extension, thought process the whole way. And that, of course, was my thought process for XRP, which I have to take the lick on the chin for. XRP did not do it. but it was applying the same strategy that I was using for Bitcoin and using for Ethereum. Bitcoin and Ethereum both hit it. XRP, unfortunately, did not. So if we kind of get a closer look at how this all played out in here for Bitcoin back in 2014 and 2015, and attempt to apply it to what's going on right now, because obviously this thing looks way different, right? Even my expectations were like, hey, here we go, exit plan completed. Looking for one more push up to get to like 70 to 80 potentially. Never happens. Boy, it becomes this big kind of rolling structure up in here. And then we just get no retracement coming out of this, right? So if we kind of try to take like a closer look at what happened there at the end of that previous super cycle for Bitcoin to try to align things up and say, how did this thing play out? Well, we recognize that the second half of this thing, this whole ending, has really mirrored what the endings look like. And from a time perspective, lines up quite well with our top actually happening back in here. Notice how our breakouts come out in here. Notice how we're working through this area together right in here. That the extreme time period lines up there for April 14th, which is the day that Coinbase IPO'd. We had peak excitement in the market. And then wild action in here, then suddenly we really kind of start to fall in line with how a capitulation starts to play out. And then now looking potentially like we're working on Wyckoff accumulation that could go on for a very long time, just grinding out throughout here. But the things to take notice of are how these endings really work themselves out in here, and that we've pulled back into these same locations for when the breakout of the previous super cycles occurred. If we say, no, that doesn't matter, and we just kind of move this along over here, suddenly we just don't have anything with Bitcoin's price action that is resembling previous Bitcoin falls. It doesn't resemble what happens when it's a organized corrective structure that is more so of an A, B, C correction to line itself up and go off on a new bull run, which is what we had happen back in here as well, is that you have your A, B, C correction. Right now with Bitcoin's current price action, there's nothing in there resembling any type of ABC correction happening in here. It has just been straight line down. And so when we go back and we think about, well, how did the ending of this cycle come to an end, right? It was like super exciting, super exciting, super exciting, boom, then it's just straight up over. What do we have? Super exciting, super exciting, super exciting, boom, then waddling sideways, right? So if we assume kind of during that time period that this was when the excitement all ended, it did all end back in here, and we understand how this price fractals have come to a conclusion in here, that we have created what would be capitulation. In addition, we had things breaking in this market. We had Luna, we had UST, we had the depegging of USDT, Three Arrows Capital, BlockFi, Celsius. We had breaking in this market. Those are things that happen in capitulations. Those are max fear events. And all of that occurred as we shuffled our way down in here. So when you think of it from a psychology perspective, when things get that scary, when they get that bad, it is natural human behavior that people want to sell. Totally. And if you sell, you have the conviction that things must go lower. It's one thing to sell just because of a technical reason, but it's another thing when there's like this really bad narrative to go along with it, right? So does it seem like we had events and circumstances that resemble capitulations of things got incredibly bad? For sure. And not only that, our price level where we've pulled back to for Bitcoin is of an interesting price level. You get back to the previous all-time high. You're matching structurally on fractals. It's also a technical retrace level of the entire length of the whole wave. So we actually have gotten back to a 786 Fibonacci retracement level. In addition, if we do study that time period back in here, in which we have been showing capitulation occurring in here for Bitcoin, we can take a look at how it looked when the top did come in, working the theory of this being the actual top, right? We notice in here, see how high this RSI is in here from that time period, equivalent to this moment in here. See how high the RSI is in here. Then as it works its way down and bounces up, you work your way down with a bounce up. That is what we saw happen in here as well. So as we pulled back in here and then our move up, just like we saw over there for Bitcoin back in 2014, and then off into capitulation we go. Off into capitulation we go, both times going into oversold weekly RSI. So a lot on the screen there, but taking another look at it a little bit closer to see this is your initial fall, and this is your initial fall, both back to the same weekly RSI levels on both of these. And I'll take these off there so you can see them a little bit better at this point to see how they both fall off in here from this moment back in here that we fall all the way down. Then notice how it bounces up into this moment and into this moment over here. And then as it rolls down, we have an ABC, rolls down, ABC, and then off into capitulation. After the ABC, off into capitulation. So from RSI standpoints, fractal standpoints of what capitulations happen at the end, and notice no real retracements coming in here, right? That's precisely what we've had happen in here at this moment. Fib levels, perfect 786 fib hit along with on the market cap, the previous all-time high, while also being the same location. If we line up our fractals as our ending has happened, the same location we pulled back to in the past, all while still working this whole super cycle theory. So you have all the resemblances of what happens in here after you've gone through the prolonged bear. The thing throwing everybody off, and it's been difficult for me as well, is the whole structure of what we've had happen in here. And the idea that our new all-time high technically was as if it was deeper into a bear market. But when you look at the RSI structures of where this all occurred at, that our euphoria time period was way back in here, and that for Bitcoin in that time period, way back in here, you could see how we're way deep into this thing at this point, being way over here. But it's like, okay, if you're going to sit here and say that, our fractals were just kind of wonky and that we've actually been in the capitulation phase already, can you do better than that? Can you do better than just saying, hey, look, our peak time was back, Wall Street bets, laser eyes, diamond hands. And then when we set the new all-time high for Bitcoin, we were actually already in a bear market. And there's a lot of indicators over here on the altcoin market saying that that is true as well. Like when we look over here to Litecoin, its top was back there in May of 2021. You can see the top set over here in November was not a new high for Litecoin. You go back historically through Litecoin's chart to see how Litecoin peaks near the peak of Bitcoin, both back in 2013 and over here in 2017 and 2018. Notice how Litecoin peaks here as Bitcoin is peaking during this time period. And then by the time Bitcoin gets in here, Litecoin's already heading into a bear market, right? Well, head over here to our current time right now. What happens? Litecoin peaks back during the Wall Street bets, Elon Musk, all those good things. And then by the time we get into the capitulation fractal, even with Bitcoin officially setting its new all-time high, Litecoin is still working on its bear. And so from a time perspective of how long Litecoin bear markets can last for, we've gone beyond the length of time of how long a whole bear market can last for, or at least how long they have lasted in the past. You can look back to the one from back in 2014 to see how much time was spent in here before capitulation occurred, and that we pretty much capitulated right here near the same day and same time for capitulation to actually play out. Go back to 2018, how much time elapsed before the capitulation was done. Same story. We're beyond the amount of time in which a bear would take place for these altcoins, signaling that if their all-time highs were set back there in May, that was peak euphoria of the market, and it's been in a bear ever since. And that enough time has elapsed on these things for bears to have already been completed and done for them. And of course, the same thing goes for Doge, right? When was the peak excitement for it? All the euphoria taking place back during this time period, as it was during the peak back in 2017, as it was shortly after the peak over here back in 2014. So in February of 2014, Doge is peaking back in here. Notice by the time we get to this moment right in here, we're already deep into a bear market for Doge. Notice by the time we get into this period right in here, we're deep into a bear market for Doge. And as we get into this time period in here, we're deep into a bear market for Doge. So all things are pointing to the peak of all excitement in the market and behavior in the market did take place back in here, and that the ending phases happening in here resemble that of what an ending phase looks like. So I see a lot of people out there saying, we have to do what Bitcoin has done in the past. You look at both of these pull downs that have happened in here, they're both about 84 to 85%. Has Bitcoin done that? No, it definitely hasn't done that. But at the same time, Bitcoin structurally has done this whole thing of being deep in a bear market. And I've shown this many times on the channel as well, is that if we look at the idea of using this phase of the capitulation here for Bitcoin right now, would it make sense to apply that same ideology here to what Bitcoin was doing during this time period too? Right? I mean, you're deep into the same phase, right? Well, ironically, like you all know, it creates the same fractal in here right from the very top. So we have the exact same fractal emerging from the very top of what occurs in the depths of a bear market, as we also have this one appearing, the one that is the depths of a bear market and into the capitulation phase already happening. So I hope I haven't lost you at this point. I definitely believed the top was coming in the thick of the moment, in the Wall Street bets, laser eyes, literally February 21st, 13 days after Tesla says that they've bought $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. We're talking looking like a dummy at this point. Everybody thinking that's the dumbest thing you could possibly do. And the reality is, you don't get a whole lot of followers, a whole lot of excitement of people following you during the heat of a moment, and you're sitting there saying you're selling. It's not good for subscriber growth. But you know who did get great subscriber growth? People saying we're going to 100K. People saying we're going to 200K. What the herd wanted to hear is what gains the follower growth. But I'd rather come on here and give my true, honest opinion on things and present the data the best I can than care about subscriber growth. Subscriber growth eventually comes on its own. Right now, presenting bullish arguments is not actually good for subscriber growth. It is not actually what the herd wants to hear right now. If you look on Twitter and you see who is bullish versus who is bearish, the people who are bear posting nonstop are seeing massive subscriber growth. If I wanted to appease the masses and just do what the general public wants to hear, because what they want to hear is that we're going to go lower. That's the type of videos I should be making. I should be making videos saying, hey, we're going lower, blah, blah, blah. Then if it breaks up to the upside, say, hey, oh, well, I'm glad I'm wrong, guys. At least we all get to benefit. That is the benefit of being a bear, is that if the prices go up, nobody's really that mad at you. And it's great for engagement and it's great for follower growth. In moments like this, just like everybody's screaming, we're going to 100,000, we're going to 200,000, 300,000. Why aren't you using log-based fibs? You're a dummy. So I understand what the masses want to hear right now, and I haven't been giving it to them. Because all these charts say this thing should be completed. But what the masses want is they want one more dip. And here we are. We're like 18 minutes into this video. I'm supposed to be sitting here telling you what happens, what's my speculation if Bitcoin does actually go any lower. But the point that I had to lead you up to here to see is how I have viewed these charts this whole time, how I have viewed Bitcoin this whole time, and to say that we've done all the things necessary for it to be completed. There's been enough time that has elapsed on those altcoins for a bear market to be completed based on previous altcoin bear markets in the past. It doesn't mean all of them are done. We've learned not all altcoins are created equal. The bottom of Litecoin was right in there. Bottom of Bitcoin was right in there. Some altcoins still went on much lower. That's definitely still possible for a lot of altcoins. But for things like Litecoin, we've seen that enough time has elapsed for a bottom to already be in. There's been enough time elapsed on Bitcoin for a bear market to have already been completed. The ending structure resembles what a completed bear looks like. And we've gone back to retracement levels that make sense for the completion to be done. But what happens if we take that low out? What does it mean? That if our capitulation doesn't matter, our retracement levels don't matter, all-time high doesn't matter, RSI structures don't matter, the length of time that the altcoin markets have been in a downtrend doesn't matter, but that we're still going to go lower and we're going to do something similar to what we've done in each prior bear market where the market cap falls roughly 84%. Pretty close. So that we're going to just head straight on down from here and we're going to go right on into that 83, 84%. Wham! Gets us right back into here, which for Bitcoin in here, that's about $12,000. Here's your big problem for that happening right in there. One, we have no examples of Bitcoin crashing in this type of manner that ultimately proved to be bullish long term. As we've shown, each structure of these, that's the capitulation, that's the ending. Also, in each one of these, we have ABCs where we fall about 70%. Then after our 70% fall, we end up bouncing about 100%. Right now, we will have had no bounce. So we've gone deeper, just about 74% with no bounce if we keep going straight down. It means we're not doing ABC corrections in here like we have in our past, but it creates something much more scary because what we would actually be having in here is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the big problem about having a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the downside like that is that's typically the first major wave before you ABC and then do it all over again for a massive, massive bear market. One that pretty much wipes Bitcoin down to below the 2018 low, which, as just shown over there, right? You have ABC corrections, suddenly you start having big bear corrections with 5 waves to the downside. So imagining, right, this is your fall off of the top. Here's February, March, and April. Then here's Three Arrows Capital, Celsius, Luna UST collapse. And we get to where we are right now, right back down here, just below the all-time high over here, waddling around in here, everybody cheering for one more low. But what happens if we get that one new low, that another breakdown eventually ends up coming then? We have now put ourselves in a position where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 our way down rather than ABCing our way to go on for another move. And so you have everybody cheering that they want to buy this dip, they want one more low. But what I see happening over here is that we've now created a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off of the top rather than an ABC in typical form where we fall 70%, bounce 100%, go on for the capitulation, boom, start a bull market. If where we're at right now goes for one more push down, if we start breaking down below and we start taking out that all-time high in the market cap, taking out the 786 Fibonacci retracement, the RSI doesn't matter anymore. Crossing the 50-week and 100-week don't matter anymore. We're not doing the behavior of what happens for accumulations and for Bitcoin to ramp up and go into a new run, but creating a scenario where this was merely just the first leg of Bitcoin's bear market. There would be absolutely nothing bullish about this structure if it does end up doing that. Could it do it? Of course it could. I'm not a fortune teller. I could show you all the things on the charts that show confluence to the past. And well, even what's happening right now in the market shows incredible confluence to the past of what happened when the bottom had already come in for Bitcoin, both in 2018 and in 2014. By this time, the bottom was already in. But if you go lower, you deviate from fractals, you deviate from Fibonacci retracements, deviate from previous history, and your wave count on here becomes a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is merely the A wave of an ABC correction. Because the things to look at too for Bitcoin, for the structure that it's set up to go off into this bull run, right? And I've talked about this many times before, is you have your parabolic rise, you have your crash, your retrace, your reaccumulation, then you go on for your 4.236 extension. This is what Ethereum did before the end of the 2017 bull run. Parabolic rise, your crash, your retrace, your reaccumulation, your breakout to go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right back down into here. As we're talking for Bitcoin, right back down into these price levels right in here, the $12,000, $12,000, $14,000 everybody's looking for. Yes, you do get a bounce out of there, but it is nothing more than your A, B, C below the low of the accumulation zone where the crash, retrace, reaccumulation took place from. So again, you can kind of see how this has played out in here, that you pull back down into these price levels in here. And this is nothing more than your A, B, C. And so you can see those things kind of side by side. You know, here's your breakout level, right? Here's all your accumulation. Here's all your accumulation. And here you get your dip down into these price levels, as Ethereum did down in here. You have built the big case that the bottom's not coming in 2 or 3 months like people believe. We may get a bounce out of there and everybody thinks it's the bottom, but we wouldn't even be close. So is that possible? Of course it's possible. Anything is possible. We can look to the past and say, hey, we have all the confluences of what happened when the bottom had already come in. But if we lose all of our confluences, if we lose our fractals, if we lose our moving averages, if we lose our RSI confluence, and just if all of these things break, and then if Bitcoin posts a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the question is, what does it actually mean? For most people, the consensus is that's a dip to buy and accumulate Bitcoin long term. But the argument that I make is that structurally for Bitcoin, it's far, far worse. because you've now made the exact structure of what it looks like for the A wave on the downside to go way deeper. You've gotten really far away from that 200-week moving average, right? What do? You just probably come back up and test that 200-week moving average again as all these puppies come in down here at the same time to get yourself knocked in right there, and then off and away you go. And I know a lot of people will say that is impossible. I know. Same thing people said with my exit plan for Bitcoin back here in February of 2021, that it would be impossible for prices to ever get down here because we couldn't go below the all-time high. But people probably thought that about Netflix too, right? FANG, all these years, FANG, Netflix. What does it do? It comes all the way back below the accumulation zone of the crash, retrace, reaccumulation, breakout. Wham, all the way back down in here. A massive stock, FANG, Netflix. It can do it. So the point of the whole video is to show we have a massive amount of confluences out there showing that this has a great shot at being the actual bottom, and we're working on long-term accumulation happening in here for Bitcoin. RSIs say it, fractals say it. We're at a great Fibonacci retracement level. We're at the all-time high on the market cap. Fear and greed index popped out of extreme fear. All these things are great signs. But if we do go deeper, it breaks all of those things, right? And so the question becomes, well, what does it mean if it actually breaks all of those things? Like, what if the stock market does take out that low? What if it does take out the 200-week moving average? What if it does take out the February of 2020 high and Bitcoin crumbles down to $12,000? What does that mean? And does it mean we are just doing what we've done historically, where we fall 83% and then that's the bottom, that's the accumulation, and then that's the buy and we're done? The only thing that would have confluence in this circumstance would merely be the percentages. The fractals would not have confluence. The RSI would not have confluence. The wave count would not have confluence. The behavior of fear and greed would not have confluence. The behavior of these moving averages would not have confluence. Absolutely nothing would have confluence to the past of saying this is our bottom outside of merely saying it's 83, 84%. But what you would have is you would have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's a very, very bad sign long-term for Bitcoin. And not to mention, if that does happen, what would probably happen in the altcoin market? We'd probably see the altcoin market crumble with it too. So I, of course, don't know which one will happen. I can show you all of these things that say, hey, this is how we behaved historically that marked the bottom. I've just went through all of them. All of these different things are the exact same thing that happened when the bottom was marked in our previous bear markets. But what happens if it does something different? Is it the dip to buy to prepare for a new bull run? And structurally, we have no precedent throughout history to say that it would be. And that in order to have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the downside, that would merely mean it's the first leg of a multi-year bear market for Bitcoin. Whereas we're used to these things lasting about a year, but it would merely mean the first leg was a year, and then we got a couple more years left for another one to happen too. So before you thumbs down this, present an argument. Give me a reason in the comment section to say, no, it's okay that we go down to $12,000. And if you can give me something better than saying, because we've done 83% throughout every previous time, but to say that it's okay because, we're going to break all this stuff. We'll break the past all-time high. We'll break the fib levels. None of this stuff will matter anymore. RSI behavior doesn't matter anymore. We've got to break all of these things. What are you seeing differently that says we're going to suddenly be okay at $12,000? Because in each of the previous major corrections that have happened, these were ABCs. ABC. This will suddenly be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm open to hearing it, but these are kind of my thoughts. So I'm bullish on Bitcoin. Like I said, I'm willing to accumulate Bitcoin down at these lows around the $19,000 price point. But if we take out that low on the market cap right there, then everything's different. Something's real broke with Bitcoin. So I spent the first half of the video kind of showing all the confluences, showing how Bitcoin has behaved historically and how all those things build a case for the bottom being currently in right now. If we were to break lower from where we're at right now, which anything is possible. I know how people operate. There's people saying, see, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't ever just sit here and pull stuff out of my backside to say, this is why. I show you all the data. You can see all those things. You see those moving averages cross. You see how they behave throughout history, those marked bottoms. You see the fractals. You see the fib levels. You see the all-time high. You see the relative strength index. Those are very clear. Those are just what happened at the bottom of previous Bitcoin bear markets. I think we can all agree on that. Does that mean the bottom is in? No, of course not. Does it have confluence to the bottom? Definitely. But what would happen if we do break lower? It means we would lose all of those things and none of those models to the past would matter anymore. And that we have created a 5-wave structure for our first wave down. And that would present a much bigger problem for Bitcoin moving forward because that is not what happens in bullish corrections. And I know it's crazy to think that 83% corrections in the past were bullish, but they were. They were ABC corrections as Elliott wave theory shows. 5 waves down is not bullish. That's merely your first wave. So what happens if Bitcoin breaks lower? What do I speculate? I speculate that this is just the beginning of this crazy ride. And that like Ethereum, and like Netflix showed, there's a potential that over the long term, we could see that $2,000 to $3,000 Bitcoin, but it might take a long time to get there. And while I think there's a lot of coins out there that are better than Bitcoin and do a better job than Bitcoin, I'm definitely not cheering against Bitcoin. I do not want to see that. I think that would be pretty devastating for our market, or there would have to be a major market dynamic change where Bitcoin is no longer the controller of the cryptocurrency market any longer. History would say that if it's going to continue operating the way it is, that in that circumstance, it would be very bad for the altcoin market if we broke that low. If that low gets taken out, we will probably see the altcoin market crumble with it, if history is any type of guide. But it also says there's big problems for the whole cryptocurrency market for a long time to come, or there has to be a market dynamic change where Bitcoin is not the king any longer. Personally, I like things to be a little bit more readable in the market. So I would rather Bitcoin does kind of hold itself in here so we kind of have a framework to work with. And I'm definitely not cheering for that for Bitcoin. But it's something to keep in mind of how many things truly would break if we do actually go set a new low, because there's no historical context for what would come next. So, all right, that's going to be it. On to a little bit of Friday fluff. I like that Crypto Eddie does fluff at the end of her videos. And on Fridays, I've been trying to kind of do that, especially on a video like today where it's like super serious, right? That would be pretty bad if all that happened for Bitcoin. And we're heading into the weekend, so this is the last video of the week. I do have family coming in from out of town, so I will be off this weekend. But let's end it on a little bit of a brighter note, right? I've been kind of like updating you guys every Friday on what's kind of going on with me, the two kind of hobbies that I've got going on right now, which is learning to play the drums and this fish tank scenario that I've gotten myself into by my wife bringing home some little cheap 3-gallon fish tank that she got off of Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or something like that. She got it for free. Turns out the tank wasn't good. I had to go buy a whole new tank to save the fish that we had. And, hundreds of dollars later, well, I've been dealing with a serious issue with this fish tank. And fortunately, the fish have somehow stayed alive through all of this. And I'm showing you this still image of my tank because this is what it looks like when it's clear. And this was actually quite a bit ago. It was when we only had a couple plants in there. Everything was really clear. But I kept dealing with algae blooms inside of my tank. Over and over again, I kept dealing with algae blooms. And I'm not a fish tank expert. I'm not a fish keeper. Or, I don't know what to do. And I'm going to the fish store. I'm going to PetSmart, Petco, whatever. Going to actual fish aquarium stores to ask them what to do. They're like, look, you're overfeeding it and you're giving it too much light. You need to reduce the amount of light that you're doing. You need to cut the food in half of what you're giving them. So I do that, right? Still, this thing blows up with algae all the time. It gets super cloudy. And then finally they're like, look, you need to just kind of let it run its course, because the mistake I was making, I was taking out the filter from the back and cleaning it. And they're like, no, just let that thing run its course. Let the algae go crazy. And then the fish tank should clear itself up. So for the last couple of weeks, I let it do it. Look at this thing. It's been absolutely crazy and insane, not being able to see through it in any way. And here, we'll go back to what it looks like when it's all crystal clear. And it's like, dude, what is going on here, man? And I finally did more research, right? And so it turns out this fish tank we bought, right? It's got the filtration system in it and everything like that. It turns the water over so I don't need an aerator or anything like that. And it's got the light built in on the top of it. Guess what? Turns out this thing is a saltwater aquarium. person at the store, they said, hey, you can use this for fresh water and you can use it for salt water. Okay, cool, whatever. I don't know the difference. I'm not a fish keeper. But the problem with it is that the light in it has like 14,000 Kelvin or K, which is like the measurement of the light color. And that's for like coral reefs. So I've been putting like this blasting light onto my tank for months. And like all over the internet, it like specifically says, if you have too much light, you're going to cause algae blooms. I'm over here doing everything humanly possible to try to fix this godforsaken issue that I've had where it just gets absolutely disgusting. I do a big water change and then it goes right back to that a week later. So $150 later, I now have another light in there. It is specifically for this. It's only 6,500 Kelvin. So this should prevent the problem. In the next couple days, I'll do another water change. I'll find out if I needed to use like a UV light to try to kill off the last of the algae. But hopefully I've corrected the problem. And hopefully next week, when I report to you, the tank looks like this and that it didn't require chemicals. It didn't require anything. The tank is just running smooth. But holy cow, what a nightmare it's been. On another note, our other tank, we still have the babies in there. I keep finding them in the tank. They keep going into like the filter area. So I keep finding more babies and I just shift them over to our other little tank, which has stayed crystal clear because it has the right light on it. But they're all doing well. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this one. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.